Jai Hind class. Today we are going to start with the new topic of class 10, heredity and evolution. Children, regarding this topic, we have not done this topic previous in any of the previous section. So what we are going to do, before we are going to start with the topic, we are just going to start with some basic terms. So heredity. What do you understand by the term heredity? If you must have done it in the lower class a little bit, heredity means the transfer of trait from one generation to the other generation. And when we are going to talk about traits, the term trait you must have done in the junior class, that is trait. When we are going to talk about trait, that means a particular form or any function. For example, plants perform photosynthesis. So photosynthesis would be a trait. The second term which we are going to study, that is variation. What do you understand by the term variation? Variation are the differences present between the individual of the same species. That means the difference present between you and me. That is variation. The difference present between the two frog or between the two fishes. But the term variation we can only use if we are talking about the individual of the same species. Apart from that, in this particular topic or in this particular chapter, we are also going to study about phenotype and genotype. Phenotype, if we are going to talk about phenotype, that means external appearance of an organism. How that particular organism look like, or we can say physical property as we do in the chemistry. In the same way, external appearance of an organism is phenotype and genotype is genetic constitution. Because of the kind of genes which are present in you, because of those particular kind of genes, you look like something. It depends, whatever you look like, your mental makeup, everything depends on the gene. So genotype, genetic constitution, phenotype, external appearance. So these are the basic terms. Now we have done in the previous chapter that during the process of reproduction, reproduction is the life process, or we can say it's a process which takes place in both advanced as well as lower organism. And at the time of reproduction, variation are introduced. This is the main significance of reproduction. It is not essential for the survival of an organism, but it is essential for the survival of the species. So during the process of reproduction, variation, they keep on collecting, they keep on we can say accumulating. In case of asexual reproduction, since only one parent is involved, so what we can say, the reproduction, the variation, it takes place only at the time of DNA copying. Now the other thing is that in case of sexual reproduction, since two parents are involved, so the frequency of variation would be more. So the basic significance or the basic importance of reproduction is that the variation, they will keep on accumulating, they will keep on collecting, and these variation, they keep on passing from one generation to the next generation. And as the variation keep on accumulating, so slowly and steadily it would lead to the formation of the new species. So this is the second thing, that the variation, they keep on accumulating during the time of reproduction. Now the next is, what are the rules by which, there must be some laws in physics as well as in chemistry. In the same way, in case of genetics, which is a branch of biology which deals with heredity and variation, there are some particular rules which actually control that how do these trait or character, they pass from one generation to the other generation. This you have done in your class 9th as well, that the genetic material present in our body, that is DNA. DNA is the genetic material and it is present inside the nucleus. And where it is present? It is present in the chromosomes. So chromosomes are the thread-like structure which are present in the nucleus of the cell. The chromosome is made up of DNA, and the functional segment of DNA which is present on the chromosome, which is known as gene. Actually, these are those particular genes which pass from one generation to the next generation, and these particular gene control our trait or characteristic. How do we look like? In few traits we resemble our father, in few traits we resemble our mother. Everything is being controlled by the gene. So before we start with the genetics or with the rules for the inheritance of trait, you should be aware about the name of the father of genetics. The name of the father of genetics is Austrian monk. His name was Gregor John Mendel. That was the name of the father of genetics, and when he started the experiment with garden pea. Now, why did he choose garden pea? There was no specific reason, because he was not an inborn scientist. He was an Austrian monk, but he chose because they were easily available, it was easy to maintain. But later on, when the survey were being conducted, it was being found that the garden pea, when he chose, there were several reasons. If he would not have chosen garden pea, then it might be possible that he might not be successful. Garden pea, it is having at least 7 pair of contrasting traits are present. It is easy to grow, it is easy to maintain. So because of all those particular things, garden pea is being chosen for the experiment. So, and it can be self-pollinated as well as cross-pollinated, though Mendel was not aware. But later on, when research was being conducted, it was being found that because of those particular reasons, the garden pea was being considered as the best material at that time for the experiment of genetics. Now this is the diagram of the chromosome, you can see, and it is present inside the nucleus of the cell. Now they had also shown you the structure of the DNA, the double helical structure. Now, the first experiment which was being conducted by Mendel, that was, he took into consideration 1 pair of contrasting traits. He chose tall pea plant, and then the tall pea plant, it was being crossed with short pea plant. Now in F1 generation means first filial generation, what he observed that all the pea plants which he obtained, they were of tall height. Now he thought, what happened to the trait of short height? Because in the parent generation, if you can look at the diagram, the short pea plant and tall pea plant both were present. But in the first generation or in the first filial generation, all the pea plant which he obtained, they were of tall height. In order to understand this, what he did, he crossed the plant of F1 generation. When he crossbred the plant of F1 generation, in F2 generation he observed that 75% of pea plants were of tall height and 25% of pea plants were of short height. So what does Mendel conclude? He said that the trait of short height was also present in the plant of F1 generation, but it was unable to express themselves. So he gave a conclusion that a trait that is expressed in F1 generation, that is known as the dominant trait, and the trait that is not able to express itself in F1 generation, or that is suppressed in F1 generation but reappears in F2 generation, that is known as recessive trait. So whatever trait we can observe in F1 generation, they are dominant trait, they are being controlled by dominant gene, and the trait which are able to express themselves in F2 generation, they are known as recessive trait. If you look at the figure, we are having the first, we can say the first cross is of short pea plant and tall pea plant. In F1 generation, you can easily observe that all the pea plants were of tall height. Then in F2 generation, you can observe out of 4, 3 were of tall height and 1 pea plant was of short height. In the same way, if you can look in the next figure, we are having purple and white, the cross between purple and white flower. So in F1 generation, all the pea plant, they were of purple color. So again, when we are going to do their self-fertilization, so what we have obtained, 75% of the flower, they were of purple color, and 25% of flower were of white color. And this ratio, 3:1 ratio, this ratio is known as monohybrid ratio. Okay, and this particular cross in which only one pair of contrasting trait is taken into consideration. We are just going to take one pair. We are just talking either about the height or about the color or about the shape of the seed. So this particular kind of cross in which only one pair of contrasting means opposite. If one plant is tall, the other would be of short. If the pea flower is of purple, then the color of the flower would be white. If the shape of the seed in one plant would be round, in other it would be wrinkled. So this particular cross in which only one pair of contrasting trait is taken into consideration is known as monohybrid cross. The ratio which is obtained 3:1, that ratio is known as monohybrid ratio. And on the basis of this, Mendel had formulated one law, that is law of dominance. As per this particular law, the traits which are able to express themselves in F1 generation, they are known as dominant trait, and the trait which are not able to express themselves in F1 generation but they reappears in F2 generation, they are known as recessive trait. So this is about monohybrid cross. So this is just a diagram. The simple thing you can see, we have not discussed about the shape of the seed. So round shape of the seed and wrinkle shape of the seed. When the cross fertilization was being done, so we can observe easily that in first filial generation, all the shape of the seeds of pea plant, they were of round shape. And in F2 generation, 75% were of round shape and 25% were of wrinkle shape. Now the next type of cross is dihybrid cross. In case of dihybrid cross, instead of one, we are going to take two pair of contrasting trait. For example, we can study together about height and shape of the seed, or we can talk about color and shape of the seed. So he selected pea plants having two pair of character, that is shape and color of the seed. He selected pea plants having round and yellow seed and crossbred them with wrinkled and green seed. And then the cross pollination was being done. In F1 generation, all the pea plants which he obtained, they were of round shape and yellow color. Again, in order to understand that what happened to the trait of green color and wrinkle shape, he self-pollinated the plants of F1 generation. But in this particular case, there was some more result which he obtained. Apart from parental combination, some new combination were also being observed. If you look at the figure, you can actually observe that the ratio which he obtained, that was 9:3:3:1. 9 combination, that is round and yellow, they were the same parental combination. One combination was wrinkled and green, again it was the same as parental combination. Now the 3 combination were of wrinkled and yellow. Wrinkled and yellow combination, they were not present in the parent plant. One more combination, that is round and green, again that combination was not present in the parent plant. So Mendel concluded that during the inheritance, during the inheritance of more than one pair of trait, the genes which were actually controlling these traits, they actually assort independent of each other. They are not dependent on each other, they are not linked. They assort independent of each other, or the traits are inherited from one generation to the other generation, but these particular traits are not linked. The genes controlling these traits are also not linked. So this is the same diagram which they have shown, the cross. Now the next is sex determination in human beings. So as we all are aware that we are having 46 chromosome, or we can say 23 pair of chromosome. Out of these 23 pair, 22 are autosome and 1 pair is sex chromosome. The human female, they are homogametic because they are having only X and X chromosome, and the human male, they are heterogametic as they are having X and Y chromosome. Now, if the sperm having X chromosome fuses with an egg having X chromosome, the child will be a girl. If a sperm having Y chromosome fuses with an egg having X chromosome, the child will be a boy. So can we say that the sex of a child, it actually depends on the father, because it is the father's sperm only which carries either X chromosome or Y chromosome. Mother will always give only X chromosome. So this is how the sex is determined in human being. It is genetically determined. It actually depends on the type of sex chromosome which is inherited by the children from their parent. In few lower organisms, the sex is not genetically determined. Sometimes it depends on the temperature, sometimes it depends on the environmental condition. It also depends on the temperature in which fertilized egg is kept. But it happens only in the lower organism. As we advance in the evolutionary time, as we advance, the complexity increases, so everything becomes little bit more advanced or more complex. So is the sex determination in human beings.